It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to this special Boxing Day edition of the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and joining me is the main man himself, the headliner of the preview show, and that is, of course, Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, Merry Christmas!
Hello, Merry Christmas. We're keeping our fingers crossed for a Boxing Day football match.
We certainly are. We were laughing before we came on air, and the fact that this very, very well may be the second preview show in a row that is absolutely not needed. So I don't know if any of you actually listened to the Villa one. Probably not many because it never happened. But yet another game called off with a couple of hours before kickoff, Dave. And this one, the Boxing Day game away at Everton also, at home to Everton also looking in doubt. It's a bit of a messy situation.
It is, and well, although postponements aren't good, you hope that they give fans sufficient notice. I think the fact we've had we've had three, haven't we? Because we had the Spurs game as well. Yeah. That was obviously for a different reason.
That was our fault, to be fair.
But the fact that these games been called off so late because of presumably late COVID tests coming through, it's not very good for the travelling supporters. Obviously, we've had it for home and away games now. And we don't really want to see it again. If they're going to take the decisions, they need to be 24 hours before, really. They don't need to be on the day. You can understand it perhaps for, waterlogged pitches and snow, but for other reasons, I think they should be giving supporters more notice.
Yeah, I get that. I suppose, like you say, it is really difficult because if they are having to test players on the day of the game to be absolutely sure that they are fit to play and they're not infected, then they can't do that any earlier. They can't make that, that has to be as late as possible. So I do understand it. If you were the head of the Premier League, Dave, what would you do? What would be your grand theory?
I don't know. It's not an easy situation to be in. I think that the one thing they can do is improve the communication. I think they've kept it very secret in terms of what's going on. I think if they're more open with what the processes were, perhaps fans would understand it a little bit more. I think it is a little bit more open than it was, but it just seems to be sort of cloak and dagger, a bit sort of behind the scenes and not really keeping everyone up to speed. So they need to be more transparent and also better communication.
Yeah, would you consider a break?
It's difficult because I think the way things are going, is it going to be any better in 2 or 3 weeks' time? I'm not sure it is necessarily. You're going to have, you could do, I mean, this is the old argument with the winter break, saying, well, we're not going to have games over Christmas and New Year. You do that, and then you have a cold snap afterwards, and then you lose games because of the weather. So it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to know what to do. It's not an easy situation they're in, and it's going to be a tricky one, you would think, for the next, certainly for the next month certainly to the end of January, would have thought it's going to be quite a few more postponements.
You are the absolute expert at the politician's answer, Dave. Every time I put you on the spot and tell you to tell me what you would do, you fade it like the very best of Westminster, I tell you. I'm never going to get an answer out of you. You just dance around it. But okay, that's fair enough. Well, listeners, let's start this preview show by getting your opinion. What would you do? What, as a fan, do you want to see happen? Do you want a break? Do you want games behind closed doors? Do you want the whole season to be abandoned? What? Obviously, I'm presuming, well, actually, the way the season's going, that last one might not be that controversial an option. But do let us know your thoughts. Drop us a line, let us know what you think you would do to solve this debacle. And before we go on to preview what will hopefully be our Boxing Day fixture, Dave, we have a quiz question. Now, before the Villa Park preview, even though we didn't get to see any football, we did actually leave you a quiz question which you should have answered. And that question was, in which year did Burnley last play a match on Christmas Day and which team was it against? Dave, what on earth was the answer to that one, please?
Well, the correct answer was 1957. Ooh. And although there can't be too many of our listeners who attended that match at Turf Moor, it was against Manchester City, although who knows? I can reveal that after a goalless first half, City's Irish winger, Fionnan Fagan, better known as Paddy, gave the visitors the lead, but Burnley came back from behind to win 2-1 with goals from Brian Pilkington and Albert Cheeseborough.
Oh, excellent. I did not get that. I guess 1945, I think, didn't I? So I was way out. So did any of our listeners get the correct answers?
Well, it was a tricky question, and although we did receive a few replies from our listeners, only one guessed the correct year this time, and that was regular quizzer Jan. Although we're not keeping score, I think he may now have accumulated more correct answers this season than even John Robertson.
Even John Robertson. Well, there will be another chance to answer a quiz question at the end of this episode, so do not go anywhere, just stay tuned. But let's move on and take a look at the history of our recent Premier League games against Everton at Turf Moor, because that is indeed what we are previewing. It's the Boxing Day special, Sunday the 26th of December, a 3 p.m. kickoff, not televised anywhere in the UK. Dave, Premier League meetings kicks us off our history section. What have you got for us?
Premier League head-to-head.
Yeah, well, Burnley have faced Everton in all of our previous 7 Premier League seasons, and we have a good overall record in the 7 matches which took place at Turf Moor. Burnley have won 4 of those. We've drawn 1 and lost 2. The 2 defeats were by a 3-1 scoreline that was in October of 2014, and coincidentally, in a match played on Boxing Day in 2018, we suffered a heavy 5-1 defeat, which we don't want to dwell on too much, other than to say it proved to be a watershed moment in Burnley's season. And we had a much improved second half of the season after that and survived comfortably in the end. In terms of the wins, they started off with one in August 2009. We followed a 1-0 midweek home win over Manchester United, a very memorable match, with another 1-0 win over Everton on the Sunday. Wade Elliott scored the only goal against the Toffees, who missed a penalty in that game as well. In October 2016, a last-minute winner from Scott Arfield, who kept his cool to put away the rebound, sealed a 2-1 win. That was after Johan Berg Gudmundsson's shot had come back off the crossbar. And 2-1 was also the score in March 2018. We came from behind in that game. That was thanks to second-half goals from Ashley Barnes and Chris Wood. Ashley Williams was also sent off late in that game. And then in October 2019, Jeff Hendrick scored the only goal against 10-men Everton, who had Seamus Coleman sent off. That just leaves last season, and that match was a 1-1 draw. We played that match behind closed doors just over a year ago on the 5th of December 2020.
Good stuff.
On this day.
Well, we now usually move on to our On This Day fixture. But Boxing Day is always a very special day for football fans, and with more matches than usual to cover, we are going to split this feature into section 2. So Dave, kick us off. On this day, part 1.
Yes, part 1. Our first competitive match on the 26th of December was in 1891, although we did play a couple of friendlies on this date before that against Notts Rangers in 1885, whatever happened to them. That was a 5-0 home win, and also against a team called Halliwell in 1887. That was another home win by a 1-0 scoreline. In competitive matches played on Boxing Day, Burnley have won 26, drawn 18 and lost 44, with 106 goals for and 144 against. Some notable Burnley wins on Boxing Day from the distant past include a 4-1 home win over Liverpool in 1896, a 2-0 away win over Blackburn Rovers at Ewood Park in 1898, a 1-0 away win against Manchester United at Old Trafford in 1921. We had a 6-3 home win, a high-scoring game. That was against Leeds United in 1925, including a first-half hat-trick from Louis Page. And then we had to wait a while for our first post-war Boxing Day victory. Although there was a 1-1 draw against this weekend's opponents. We played Everton at Turf Moor on Boxing Day 1950. But we did eventually rediscover our Boxing Day form at Old Trafford. That was in 1959, as goals from Ian Lawson and Jimmy Robson helped us to a 2-1 win. The following year, 1960, saw us lose 3-1 again to Everton. That was at Turf Moor. But in 1961, we were drawing 0-0 with Sheffield Wednesday at Turf Moor when Jimmy McIlroy's 50th minute penalty was saved. We found our shooting boots after that, going on to win 4-0, and were also top of the First Division after that game. In 1963, You may recall that's the day that always gets quoted, on which 66 goals were scored in 10 First Division games. There were some ludicrous scores in there, like Fulham beat Ipswich 10-1, and there was an 8-2 win and a 4-4. There were just goals galore. But Burnley also won on that day. That's December 26, 1963. And we played at Turf Moor. We beat Manchester United 6-1. Although we did lose 5-1 in the return fixture at Old Trafford 2 days later. In 1964, we beat Fulham 4-0 at Turf Moor. That included the Willie Irvine hat-trick. In 1967, we played Everton again. There's a trend developing here. That match was at Goodison Park and unfortunately ended in a 2-0 defeat. Moving on, during the 1970s, 1980s and 1990s, Burnley played 21 times on Boxing Day, picking up 6 wins in those matches. A Lancashire derby against Blackpool at Bloomfield Road ended with a 2-1 Burnley win, with both goals from Frank Casper. The Seasiders had 2 men sent off during the second half, and Burnley also led the second division at that point. In 1973, we beat Liverpool 2-1 at Turf Moor, with goals from Paul Fletcher and Ray Hankin. Kevin Keegan missed a second half penalty for the visitors. In 1978, Paul Fletcher and Peter Noble's first half goals helped us to a 2-1 win over Blackburn Rovers. Kevin Hurd scored the visitors' goal. And in 1979, we beat Newcastle 3-2 at Turf Moor, with Billy Hamilton scoring his first goal for the club. Apparently, it inspired the chant, "Hark now hear the angels sing, the Geordies ran away." We won twice on Boxing Day in the 1980s. Both were at home, 4-0 over Rochdale in 1987 and 2-1 over Carlisle United in 1989. However, we didn't win a single match on Boxing Day during the 1990s, although there were 3 postponements as well as an abandoned match. That was against Port Vale in 1994 due to a waterlogged pitch. The referee called that match off after 76 minutes, with Burnley trailing 2-1. Our last Boxing Day game of the 20th century was against Bury at Gig Lane. An early red card when Steve Davis handled on the goal line contributed to a disastrous first half. Burnley trailed 4-0. After a Bury red card early in the second half, evened it up to 10v10, Burnley pulled back 2 late goals, but it was too late. The final result of 4-2 meant that it was a Boxing Day to forget.
Quite definitely.
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Well, as this week's Stat of the Week is also Boxing Day related, we thought we would include it here as a little interlude before we let Dave summarise what's happened in our Boxing Day games since 2000. So Dave, dig deep. Let our listeners have your miscellaneous Stat of the Week.
Yeah, well, Burnley have played more competitive matches on Boxing Day than any other day of the year. More than twice as many, in fact, as the second most popular date. There have been 88 matches in total we've played on December the 26th. In second place is, perhaps not surprisingly, New Year's Day, January the 1st. Been 42 games. 38 have been played on December 25th, which, bearing in mind there hasn't been one since 1957, means that it used to be quite a popular day for games to take place. And then the other 2 in 4th and 5th place were also December games. December 27th had 33 and December 28th had 32. The Football League's fixture computer has mostly ensured that we've stayed relatively local on Boxing Day, but the team we've played the most on the 26th of December is Liverpool, with 7. We've played 6 against Preston North End, 5 against Blackpool, and also 5 against Everton, with this Sunday's game, hopefully, becoming the 6th against the Toffees. However, we haven't won any of our previous 5 Boxing Day meetings against Everton, home and away. We drew 1 and we've lost 4, a couple of which are still to come in part 2 of our On This Day section.
Okay, well, let's delve straight into there then, please. It does bring us neatly back to exactly where we left off. So you need to let us know, Dave, what's happened since the year 2000 in On This Day Part 2.
Yeah, between 2000 and 2009, we played 8 times on Boxing Day, and during that time, our only 2 victories were at Turf Moor. They were against Wolves in 2002, thanks to goals from Gareth Taylor and Dean West. and then against Stoke in 2005, where the only goal was scored by Adi Akinbaye against his former team. In terms of the defeats, we lost twice at Barnsley in 2000 and 2006, and also at Crewe in 2003. Barnsley were also the visitors to Turf Moor on Boxing Day in the promotion season of 2008-2009, and they came away with all 3 points after a 2-1 win. That just leaves 2 drawn games, which were by a 1-1 scoreline, at home to Sheffield Wednesday in 2007, and then our first Premier League Boxing Day fixture, which was another 1-1 draw against Bolton Wanderers. Little did we know then that our manager would be jumping ship to join our opponents just a couple of weeks later, taking most of the backroom staff with him. Jumping forward to the next decade, so we're looking now from 2010 to 2019, and there was a match on the 26th of December in every year. We started off well with a trio of victories. We came from 1-0 down to beat Barnsley 2-1 at Oakwell in 2010. That was with second half goals from John Guidetti and Andre Biquet. And in 2011, we beat Doncaster Rovers 3-0 at Turf Moor, with goals from Jay Rodriguez, Martin Patterson, and a Sam Hurd own goal after he turned Kieran Trippier's cross into his own net. 2012 saw another home win, this time against Derby County. Charlie Austin and Michael Duff scored the goals on that occasion. 3 wins were followed by 3 defeats. We lost 1-0 to Middlesbrough at the Riverside in 2013, and were unfortunate to lose by the same score in the Premier League against Liverpool at Turf Moor in 2014, with Raheem Sterling scoring for the Reds. The 3-0 defeat against Hull City on a stormy Boxing Day in 2015 was a turning point in that season. Ben Mee was moved from left-back to central defence after that, and we went 23 matches unbeaten. All of the remaining games were in the Premier League. Middlesbrough were the visitors to Turf Moor on Boxing Day 2016, and that match finished as a 1-0 home win, with Andre Gray scoring an 80th minute winner. Boxing Day 2017 was an anniversary coming up. The last time Burnley scored a goal direct from a free kick. That was a worldie from Stephen Defoe, which gave us a 2-0 first half lead. Sadly, that finished 2-2, with United scoring twice through Jesse Lingard, including an injury time equaliser. And our 2 most recent Boxing Day fixtures were both against Everton, as well as the 5-1 defeat at Turf Moor in 2018, which we've already mentioned earlier in the show. We also lost 1-0 at Goodison Park in 2019. We should say at this point that friend of the show Phil Bird wrote the Burnley FC On This Day book a couple of years ago, which is still available. So if you never got around to getting hold of it, we would very much recommend it.
We very much do. Goodness me, that was some recap. Dave, have you been out in the last 2 weeks? Or have you just been researching Boxing Day matches for every Our God Sends? That was comprehensive.
All 88 of them, yeah. So it's quite time consuming, that.
Yes, love it. Well, let's move on, because I'm goodness me, we all need a break from that wonderful section. Let's move into the present, please. And there is no time like the present. So we are going to look at our scouting report. Now, we provided you with a more detailed scouting report for our first match against Everton this season, which was obviously the reverse fixture at Goodison Park in September. So this time, we're just going to look at the current situation with illness, injury and suspensions, as well as highlighting our opponent's most consistent performers for the season to date. Once we get into the new year, we'll also use this section to mention any signings during the January transfer window. So, off you go, Dave.
Scouting report!
Yeah, Damari Gray is Everton's top scorer in Premier League games with 5 so far, and he's also their highest FPL point scorer with 66. Despite some criticism from some quarters at the time, he's proving to be excellent value for the bargain price of £1.7 million they paid for him during the summer. Other Everton players who've passed the 50 FPL points mark already this season include Andros Townsend with 60, Abdoulaye Doucouré with 57, former Claret Michael Keane with 55, and goalkeeper Jordan Pickford, who has 50. Everton's form is poor going into this game, and they also have a long list of players who are ruled out or doubtful due to injury or illness, which was brought up by Rafa Benitez in the the press conference, the pre-match press conference that went out, and it does bring into question if this match may be a doubt, especially if there were to be a couple more positive COVID cases between now and Sunday. The players who are definitely out include Richarlison, Solomon Rondon, Yerry Mina, and Andros Townsend. The likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Tom Davies, and Luca Digne may possibly be in contention to be involved on Sunday, although there are doubts over Damari Gray and Fabian Delph. Provided the match does go ahead, it may be a good time to face Everton.
Definitely. Well, you've heard what we think about our visitors this weekend, but for balance, we're hoping to have the thoughts of an opposition view to let us know what they think ahead of their game.
Opposition view.
Merry Christmas, Clarets fans. It's Ian here again, resident Evertonian, to help provide some blue bias to our Boxing Day clash. Back in September, under the lights, we ended up fairly convincing 3-1 winners after conceding a goal to you early on. But how are we going to fare this time? With your last two matches called off just hours before the games because of opposition COVID cases, firstly, let's just say we hope that the match survives any such cancellation. But with Everton this season, it's less about COVID cases stopping play and more about injuries. With our current list of 6 first-team players injured, a silver lining though for us, one of those players is Solomon Rondon. But with 2 of our top 3 goal scorers in Richarlison and Andros Townsend both out, it's certainly going to be a tough match for us. But there is some good news though for Everton fans. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who has been absent from the first team squad due to a muscle injury since August, is possibly back, which with our current lack of available goal scorers could not be at a better time. That said, I can't imagine he's really match fit, and Rafa has already expressed concern that he'll have to play longer than ideal, as we haven't got much choice with our current lack of squad, which worries me that he may end up getting injured again and have to fall back on his modelling job. As for the rest of the Everton squad, do keep an eye on our 19-year-old defender Jared Braithwaite, who scored the equaliser against Chelsea in midweek, which was his first start for the club. From what I've watched, Burnley have played well this season, and you're unfairly really in the bottom 3, be it with 2 games in hand, and the possible return of your top goal scorer Maxwell Cornet from injury, who I should add up until now has been doing excellent work in my fantasy football team, will certainly cause our defence serious trouble and be a great plus for you. But what's the score going to be? It has to be seen as a must-win for both teams where a draw just won't do, and I don't think we'll see another high-scoring match as we did in September. It'll be a close and scrappy game with either side able to steal it. Naturally, though, I'm still going to go with Everton and a 1-0 win with another screamer from our signing of the year, Damari Gray.
Okay, referee Dave, who's going to be the man in the middle?
We've got Anthony Taylor of Wythenshawe. He's been appointed to take charge of the match at Turf Moor on Sunday. Between 2008 and 2011, he refereed 4 Burnley matches. They were in the Championship, and we won 3 and drew 1 of these. But since then, he's taken charge of 18 of our Premier League matches, and we've only won 3 of those, drawing 5 and losing 10. He was also the referee for 2 past matches between Burnley and Everton. In 2019, he took charge when Everton were narrow 1-0 winners at Goodison Park on the Boxing Day match we mentioned earlier. And he was also the referee for the 1-1 draw between the 2 teams at Turf Moor at the start of December 2020. Anthony Taylor has refereed 1 of our matches earlier this season. That was our home game against Arsenal, which the Gunners won 1-0. And finally, for this section, John Brooks will be the video assistant referee. He was in the middle for our 0-0 draw against Wolves at Molineux at the start of December, but will be able to stay warm in front of the screens at Stockley Park this weekend.
Definitely. So how are you feeling about the game then, Dave, before we start? I mean, obviously, you've already mentioned in the build-up to this particular section that Everton are massively out of form at the moment. I don't think Everton fans have particularly taken to Benitez. And Burnley, on the flip side, whilst we're not exactly, setting the Premier League alight, we have only lost once in the last 5 games. So on paper, it certainly looks like a game that we should be looking to get maximum points from.
Provided the game does go ahead, we know they've got their problems with injury and illness, so it could be a good time to play them from that point of view. Although sometimes, you do get sort of a Dunkirk spirit with teams if they're up against it, and that can kind of work in their favour. So it's a bit like if you go down to have a man sent off, go down to 10 men, it's not always that easy to play against. So I don't know. I think it's probably a good time to play them. They're on a poor run. They had a decent start to the season. Benitez had a decent start, but then it's kind of gone a bit downhill after that. And yeah, they're up against it a little bit, and you could tell by his body language in his press conference that perhaps confidence isn't too high there. Might be a good time to play them and get all 3 points, because we do need wins, don't we?
Yeah, we definitely do. Can we win without Corney in the squad, though? That's the key question.
Well, he's not definitely ruled out, is he? I think he's. They said that his injury had coincided with a positive COVID test, but he is back in the building. But yeah, he's probably going to be a doubt to start the game. And we know we're going to lose him fairly soon as well. He's been selected this week in the Ivory Coast squad for the African Cup of Nations as well. So we're not going to have him for too long before he's gone away with that as well. So might possibly be a player to have on the bench and make an impact late in the game.
Yeah, it's just we just look so flat without him. It's just so frustrating how we can just be a one-man side at the moment. It's driving me insane, and this is a position we just shouldn't have been in. In terms of strikers, then, who's your preferred option up front? Do you go Jay and Woody again?
I think probably, yeah. I think that's probably going to be the way we go. You've obviously got Matty Vidra to come on as an option. Ashley Barnes isn't going to be in and about things for a little while yet. So yeah, that does seem to be the way to go.
Yeah, good stuff. You're going to give me a score prediction, please, Dave?
I think we're going to win 2-0.
I was going to say 2-0 as well. Who have you got as your scorers?
Chris Wood and a Ben Mee header.
I know! Dave! The Grinch that stole Bromley's predictions. My goodness. Well, listeners, I'm not going to rise to it, listeners. You know the drill. We want to know what your predictions are. Is it going to be a Burnley win, a draw, or a lose? What's the score going to be? And who are going to be the scorers? You can tweet us at NoNayNever. You can leave a comment on our Facebook page, or you can email us at previewshow@nonaynever.net. Blatantly know we forgot our email address then, Dave. That has been the Christmas sheriff kicking in. But no, seriously, listeners, do let us know what you think the scores will be.
Fantasy Premier League update.
And moving on, we have got, goodness me, despite a ridiculous number of postponed matches in game week 17 and 18, the Fantasy Premier League, Dave, did go ahead regardless. So something happened. So we need to bring our listeners up to date, please, with what happened in those 2 game weeks, please, including the Non-and-Never League. What's gone on the last 2 rounds of matches?
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, it's been a rather tricky month so far for our FPL managers, with last-minute postponements making it very difficult to take account of which players are available. And I guess quite a lot of managers have ended up with teams with 9, 8, 7, 6 players in there. So it's been difficult for everyone. But we have to all get on with it, and it's a level playing field, same for everyone. With that in mind, here's our current top 5. With a little bit of movement in there. We have a non-mover, though, at 5th place. That's Jack Toner. Going down to 4th position is Jacob Satwell. Deck Clark is up to 3rd. And then we've got non-movers 1 and 2. In 2nd place is Luke Lambert. And our leader still, although the gap has been cut now to just 11 points, is Joe Elliott, still in 1st place.
Yeah, good stuff. What about the race for December's Manager of the Month then?
Yeah, well, that's also been affected by the volume of COVID postponements, but 3 managers who've dealt best with the challenges so far are, in 3rd place, we've got on 255 for the month. And it's interesting because the 3 top managers for December aren't in the top 5, so it is different managers coming through. It's showing that there is movement in there below the top places. We've got Paul Thomas in 3rd place on 255. We've got Josh Bond in 2nd on 257, and the current leader for December so far is Chris Horner with 261. Now, he finished runner-up, I think. He was 2nd in the November Manager of the Month, so he's having a good couple of months, and currently is leading the way for December.
Well, do we have an update on what's happening with the Non-and-Never Mini League?
No, I left that out because the positions are all as they were, so there's nothing too interesting yet to report on that.
Okay, I like the sound of that. So what about an update from the Team of the Week then? Who should we?
Well, in the most recent round of matches from last weekend, these were the top players. Now, obviously, as we know, there were a limited number of games with quite a lot of postponements. I think there were 5 matches off on the Saturday, weren't there, and at least 1 on the Sunday. So it actually wasn't possible for any manager to select this exact team, as it included 5 Manchester City players, and the limit from any one team is 3. Anyway, for game week 18, these 11 players would have scored 113 points between them. And they were in a 4-5-1 formation. We had in goal Sarr of Wolves. We had 3 Manchester City defenders out of the 5. We had Cancelo, Diaz, and Zinchenko. They were joined by Alonso of Chelsea and Andy Robertson of Liverpool. And then in midfield, we had 2 more Manchester City players, Mahrez and Sterling, and joined by 2 Arsenal players, Martinelli and Odegaard. And then up front on his own was Harry Kane. He only got 6 points, but he was the highest scoring striker in game week 18.
Yeah, good stuff. There's been some announcement this week, hasn't there? There's been some news that might affect our managers.
Just a concession really from the FPL. They've announced that managers now will receive an extra free hit chip. In the past, you could only use this once each season, but now you've actually got 2. So if you've used one already, you've got another one you can use, or if you haven't used one, you've got 2 in the bank effectively to use. The only extra stipulation with that is that you can't use it in consecutive game weeks. So if you use it in this coming weekend, you couldn't use it again for the following weekend. So you've got to have at least a gap in between. And I'm sure, Natalie, you can explain to our listeners what the free hit chip is, can't you?
As always, listeners, we will do our best to bring you the FPL updates and our preview shows for the remainder of the festive period and into the new year. But there may be some times where we have to carry over an update until the next episode, just because goodness knows what is going on at the moment. So just stay tuned with us and we will do our very best.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
Dave, let's leave our listeners with a quiz question, please.
We have a quiz question again this week, and it's in keeping with the Boxing Day theme, and is as follows. Which 2 players are Burnley's joint top scorers in past matches played on Boxing Day? So that's on the 26th of December.
Oh, that is a good question. How do our listeners submit their answer, correct or otherwise?
Well, you can get in touch with us to let us know the answer using any of these methods. You can tweet us or preferably send us a direct message on Twitter. That's at NoNayNever. You can email us, previewshow@noNayNever.net, or you can also leave a reply to the post for the preview show on either the No Nay Never Facebook page or on YouTube.
Excellent. And we will reveal those players' names and anyone who got in touch to tell us the right answers at the start of our next episode, which should hopefully be for our visit to play Manchester United at Old Trafford between Christmas and New Year. So before we bring this episode to a close, Dave, do we have any community news?
Just to mention the Burnley FC in the Community Kitchens collection for the food bank. That's back on this Sunday. Donations will be accepted between 1:30 and 2:40. And the collection points will be, there'll be one by the club shop, another by the cricket ground entrance, and also one near to the away supporters entrance on Harry Potts Way. So if you can, please give generously by remembering to bring a tin for the bin.
Tin for the bin, absolutely. Well, that is all we have time for this very special festive episode of the preview show. My thanks as ever to everyone who helped make this happen, to our opposition for giving their opposition view, to Turf Moor Stadium announcer Dominic Walker for his specially recorded preview show announcements, to producer Matt, who continues to work like an absolute demon to get all of these out, and last but no means least, our Dave Statman Roberts, for all of the hard work, particularly on that section today that seemed to be an absolute mammoth to go through the Boxing Day matches. Dave, thank you very much for getting that out for us. And to you, the listeners, for downloading and listening to this episode. Your support is very much appreciated and we would not be here without you. Goodness knows when we will be back with you, listeners. Just stick with us, play it by ear. We've all got to just fly by the seat of our pants at the moment because we just don't know what's going on. So we will get you some kind of preview show. We'll get you some kind of podcast whenever we can. But in the meantime, from myself and everybody at Team None and Ever, Merry Christmas and our best wishes for a healthy and prosperous new year. 2021 has been another crazy one. Goodness me, we don't know what's been going on here, but it has been an absolute pleasure being part of your lives. So take some time out in the next couple of days to have some time with your families and your friends and relax and enjoy the festive period. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the preview show brought to you by the None and Ever podcast. Until next time.